Thank you for watching the CEO Barbecue. My name is Antonio, and as you can tell, I'm going through a little bit of a cold, so you have to tolerate a more than usually annoying voice from me. As today, I'm going to Nevada to talk to Chad Peters about what Ridgeline Minerals did in 2024, what they want to do in 2025, as well as why they just picked up a new gold project. But of course, not before I've warned you that Resource Talks has received compensation for the production of this video from the company that's being interviewed. Please understand that this channel is a business that sells content producing services to companies, which means you can never rely on videos for research purposes. You should treat this as entertainment and not as research. The fact that this company is being interviewed doesn't mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I am not here to endorse or attack anyone, but simply to ask a few questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I am not a very experienced interviewee, please let me know, and I will try to correct that mistake in a future video. Furthermore, please only watch this if you know what you're doing. This program is intended only for experienced junior mining speculators because mineral exploration, development, and mining is a very tough business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation in the sector, as this is a very complex segment of the market, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles. Moreover, these companies are typically in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations. And as a general rule of thumb, you'd be better off understanding that most company communications, be it this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, their presence at conferences, and other social media accounts that tell you about any publicly listed company, all of that is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do, and you should be aware of that inherent bias. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed. So again, it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased, because there will always be a bias, again, albeit disclosed or not, and it could be in many different forms. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I don't have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits, so I should, under no circumstances, be considered an authority on anything. Although this might sound amusing to you, it's not amusing to me, and it is not intended as a joke. I'm pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I say or do unless you like losing money. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. And so the guests who are likely here as part of their marketing campaign, they do not possess any superior knowledge. They cannot know what's going to go up, what's going to go down, or what might end up going in circles. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high risk activities here. Also, unfortunately, try as I may, I'm not going to catch all red flags or all challenges with the company. So even if I end up asking a few tough questions, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving particles, and I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, on top of me being biased, of course. This is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Charlie Munger has many great quotes, but one that is very fitting to speculating in junior mining startups is, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it," unquote. I understand this is a long disclaimer, but it is an important one because no guarantees can be made about future events, and past performance is not a guarantee of future returns. What you will find a lot of in here are forward-looking statements. Pause the screen and read the warning that you see in order to better understand what those are. This is very important. This is also a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, containing hopes for future events that may not take place, again, depending on many different factors. Before continuing on, please talk to a professional investment licensed investment advisor with a good long-term track record, as well as do more research before taking any decisions by visiting setterplus.ca. That's where you'll find the company's official filings, and that is where you do your research. Research is not done on YouTube, Twitter, or any of the other social media or media platforms. You do it on setterplus.ca. If you didn't have enough time to read the disclaimers shown on the screen as I was talking, or if you don't understand them, you should not be consuming this content, because you might be putting your capital at risk. That all said, as you may know by now, Ridgeline Minerals is a prospect generator hybrid, which means they have exploration earn-in deals with, well, in this case, large mining companies, but they also have their own exploration ground, which again is going to be part of the conversation today as well. Now, I won't be giving you a full company overview as I typically do because I've done that in the past, as Chad and I have had a couple of conversations this past year. And there is a company specific playlist on the channel where you find all the previous interviews I've done with him. Company is listed as RDG on the TSX Ventures Exchange, where a lot has happened last year, actually. The stock started the year in the 12-cent range, fell to about 9 cents in February, and then with some volatility climbed up to 23 cents by the end of October. But almost all of those gains have now been given back, and RDG is trading at about a 16 million market cap with about 110 million shares outstanding. So this is a 15-cent stock now. This is actually where I want to kick it off already, Chad, because you've had a steady news flow, including assay results last year. You've signed large deals with new parties that are going to be spending money on your projects. You're going to be working, I believe, 5 projects in total in 2025. We'll discuss that. You've been to conferences, you've marketed well, but what's happening with the stock price? And is there something you can
Right.
do to turn it around now?
Well, like you, I have a bit of a cold as well, so we'll be a pair today. Yeah, no, it's been a tough. I think the year ended pretty weird for a lot of juniors, right? To be honest, there was a lot of excitement in the kind of September through October. Gold prices were really taking off, and you saw a lot of juniors really do well and start ticking up. And then we hit, unfortunately, the U.S. election. I think everything kind of the bottom fell out of the junior market when Trump was elected on November 5th. And then you saw it kind of segue straight into tax loss selling. And so that I think that was, the main reason why we've given back some of those gains that we had in Q2 and Q3. But still in a really strong position as a company. Great just announced, I think in 2024, like you mentioned, we announced a $20 million US deal with South32 at our Selena project. So that now makes 3 deals in the portfolio, which makes up call it our prospect generator part of the business model. We have over US $60 million in deals across those 3 projects, 2 with Nevada Gold Mines, which is a joint venture between Barrick and Newmont, 1 with South32. We run the exploration at South32, so we're actually making 10% of every dollar spent that goes in the ground. Ridgeline makes, which really helps to offset our G&A and keeps us materially involved in the exploration as well. So yeah, we're seeing a lot of money being spent. I think 2025 is going to be our biggest exploration budget yet between our partner projects and our own 100% exploration. We're going to see somewhere between 12 and 14 million dollars Canadian being spent across those 5 projects. So 5 drill programs, 3 of them fully funded by partners, and almost our entire market cap in Canadian dollars going in the ground in 2025. So I think it's going to be a huge year for us.
So we're talking, and we're going to talk about 2025 for sure, but we're
Yeah.
talking Selena, Swift, Black Ridge, Big
Yep.
Blue, Bell Creek. Those are the 5
Yep.
projects that we're talking about. Maybe operationally, you can kind of walk me through it project by project as to what happened in 2024 on those projects, if anything. Were you able to achieve what you had hoped for, and how did everything go?
Yeah, sure. We'll start with our partner projects. So at Black Ridge, which is a $10 million deal with Nevada Gold Mines, they were doing what you'd call kind of baseline, a lot of baseline geology and prospecting work. So they were infilling soil samples, the soil sampling program, doing a lot of field mapping and prospecting to try to tie the surface structural setting that we see at Black Ridge to the Leeville and Fallon mines, the Leeville mine and the Fallon discovery, which is about 3 kilometers to the south and directly along the same fault trend that hosts the Black Ridge project. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to tie together the main controls that they see controlling mineralization at those mines and discoveries. They're trying to project that onto the Black Ridge project, which we believe they're being successful at doing, which is all leading towards a maiden drill program in 2025. So that was about 300,000 spent US at Black Ridge. So let's say 500,000 Canadian at Black Ridge this year in 2024. Swift, you saw over $3 million spent across the drill program there, US again. So I'll talk in US dollars for now, and folks can do the calculation in their head. We'll keep it simple. 3 million US, 2 drill holes went in the ground, one of which was hole 6. We announced 2 days after Trump was elected on November 7th. We announced that. So we actually hit, for the first time, they drilled 3 meters of 7 grams per ton. gold at Black Ridge or at Swift, which is really important because the entire Cortez district, which is the trend that the Swift project sits on, there's like 8 million ounces in resource and reserve right now that Nevada Gold Mines controls, and the average head grade is 7.3 grams per ton of those operating mines. So what that shows us is, okay, we went from hitting a bunch of wide low grade intercepts in the past at Swift. This is the first year where we've actually hit what you can call an ore grade intercept, right? That included 1.1 meters of 10.4 grams per ton. So significantly higher grade than the current head grade. So we know that we have the grade. We know we have a massive project at Swift, and that's a really exciting thing for Nevada Gold Mines as well, as that's what they were looking for, is they wanted to see that grade with this year's program. That'll lead into, I think, a much bigger drill program in 2025, where we're hoping to hit some thicker intercepts of similar grade.
Okay. So
Yeah,
that's Blackridge and
Swift.
Swift. For the
Yep.
partner, we are left with Selena.
Yeah, yeah. So at Selena, we most of the year at Selena was really just negotiating the deal with South 32. So I mean, we were in negotiations in late 2023, and it took till August of 2024 till finally get that deal, inked and announced. So since August, since we announced that deal, we've also we've been able to see an MT survey. Sorry, blanked out a little bit there. We had an MT survey that started in September or October and continued all the way until mid-December. And what that MT survey is doing is we're spending about $350,000 US to use magnetotelluric survey, which South 32 used really effectively at the Taylor deposit. They're now doing the same survey method at Selena, and the point is to chase deep sulfide targets undercover, which is the continuation of our known oxide discovery that outcrops at surface, all the way across our chinchilla sulfide target, which is right beside copper porphyry, and is kind of the sweet spot to host a significant CRD. So that MT is going to allow us to hopefully image those deeper altered zones at depth and then target them with a drill program in 2025.
Okay, so Selena is also getting drilled in 2025.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
so basically, all three of the partner projects are going to get
All
drilled
going to
in
get drilled.
2025. Selena,
Yep.
Swift, Blackridge.
Yep.
Then your own projects, BC and BB, Big Blue and Bell Creek. What happened there? What's going to happen there in 2025?
Yeah, nothing happened at Bell Creek and nothing will happen at Bell Creek. It's a very deep postage stamp size project right in the middle of the Carlin Trend. So it's only like a half, like 500 meters away from an existing resource that Nevada Gold Mines is putting into production called the Ren deposit. It's 1.6 million ounces of 6 grams, but it's very deep. And so we're not going to do any drilling. Bell Creek is more of we call it a bargaining chip, but some leverage for us to do future deals with Nevada Gold Mines. So nothing was done at Bell Creek, just holding costs, which are very, very low, under $100,000 a year to hold that entire project. And then at our Big Blue project, that's a really exciting porphyry copper play, historic producing copper mine at an average grade of 6% back in the early 1900s. Very small scale, but very high grade. What we're now doing is we did an initial phase 1 IP survey to chase that hopefully what we thought would be the porphyry source to mineralization at surface at Big Blue. That was successful. We identified 2 potential porphyry centers at the project. And what it is, it also highlighted that both of those anomalies were open-ended. And we needed to do an additional infill survey, which was completed around December 19th of 2024. So we're actually processing that data now, should be coming in any day, and we'll get that out to the market. But we believe that it's going to show continuation of the porphyry system at depth, and I'm pretty excited to get a maiden drill program on that in March of 2025.
So essentially, Bell Creek is the only one out of the previous ones that is not going to get work. The New Gold project,
Yep.
which we're going to talk about a little bit more in
Yep.
depth towards the second part of the conversation, is also going to
Yep.
get worked, as far as I understand. But again, just more on that later on. Bell Creek, why don't like you see it as kind of a strategic leverage play maybe later down the road. So it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to look for someone else to option it out to or do anything with it. It just stays on the book. It's not expensive. That's how you see it.
Yeah, essentially. It's too small to bring in a third party, like a group other than NGM. It really is true. It's only like, I think, less than 1,000 acres. It's very small, right? It's a very strategic chunk of ground. Actually, the edge of the Bell Creek project sits on the edge of the Gold Strike tailings facility, which is a 40 million ounce mine, which is less than 2 kilometers away from the edge of the Bell Creek project as well. So we're in the right area. it's tough to bring in other partners on such a small chunk of ground, and so it's a nice little bit of leverage that we use that we can use with Nevada Gold Mines when the time's right to hopefully keep moving the company forward.
Right. That's a good overview of the five projects. What about from the perspective of overhead and operational expenses for yourself specifically? Are you
Yeah.
coming in on budget for G&A and drilling combined?
We are. Well, we didn't do any drilling ourselves in 2024. So our burn rate was quite really what we focused on in 2024 was supporting the existing deals that we had with our partners. And also, we were pretty active on the staking front, which leads into kind of that future discussion on Atlas. So we staked ground. We added to our existing land. We added ground at Big Blue as well. So that was probably our highest expense this year was staking of additional ground on top of our set G&A cost.
Right. What are you thinking 2024 G&A will come out to be total? I think your first 9 months came up to be an average of about $75,000. And I don't think I actually did check it out. I don't know that off the top of my head. So
Yeah,
what's the full year going to look like? And is 2025
sure.
expected to be higher?
2024, we're looking at around when you factor in like our holding costs for land as well. You could probably round it up to about $100,000 a month.
Hmm.
Kind of thing is which is quite low, I think, in the grand scheme of things. That includes marketing, that kind of everything. In 2025, you're actually going to see our G&A drop. The reason being is as part of our management contract with South 32 at the Selena project, we make a 10% management fee as well as being able to offset a lot of not administrative, but expiration related costs, core storage, office space, you name it, right? The cost of our vehicles, etc. So we're able to write a lot of that stuff off as part of the deal, which means that we're actually, if we do a maiden drill program, which we have the guidance so far is that there will be a maiden program this summer, we're actually going to see to help support that project, we'll actually be making money off of that deal, which will drop our G&A and yeah, so you'll see a lower G&A in 2025 than we saw in 2024, but more and much more work actually being done on the projects. It's a great scenario.
Yeah, it is a great scenario. How much money do you have left in the bank right now?
We're sitting pretty low at the moment, actually. So we have about a quarter million, which we obviously are going to need to raise money here coming up. But there's a reason why we didn't end up doing a raise in later in 2024, and it was really because just we would have if when we were trading high at in October, late October up to 23 cents. We had material news coming in with the new drill hole that was pretty good grade at Swift, right? So we couldn't launch a financing until the news was out on that drill hole. Unfortunately, the news came out around the same time as the U.S. election, and I
Hmm.
think it was largely looked over by shareholders due to other things taking the spotlight. So we didn't end up doing a raise late in 2024 like we'd originally intended, and we'll probably do something in the first quarter of 2025 before we head into a drill program.
Yeah, that would make sense. Well, what are you
Yep.
thinking about? And talk to me maybe more strategically or just from a company perspective, what are you thinking for raising capital in 2025? Do you have an idea in mind as to who you'd want to raise with? I mean, is specifically a strategic investor that you're after, more institutional backing? Do you want more retail? How are you thinking about that?
We're obviously always open to strategic investors if that opportunity comes up. But we've had really good success with current shareholders, right? So our existing shareholder base, guys like Rick Rule, a couple of really great funds that have supported us a long ways. They're always there to help us do a lead order, and we've got pretty good interest from U.S. retail with Rick Rule becoming involved in the company in 2023. So that's continued in every financing that we've had. So there's pretty significant opportunity to raise cash through U.S. retail and existing shareholders, and we shouldn't have any trouble. My concern has never been, can always raise whatever I want to raise. The issue has always been at what price are we raising at, right?
Hmm.
Trying to minimize dilution wherever we can. So.
What are you thinking 2025 is going to cost you though? I mean, you're saying G&A is going to be a little lower than that 100 grand that you think 2024 is going to have cost you by the time we see the report. So you're going to be under $1 million on what you're going to need for G&A. And then for work, Atlas, and everything else combined, how much money do you think this year is going to cost you?
Yeah, we're going to probably put $1 million US in the ground between Atlas and Big Blue.
Okay.
Let's call it 1.4, 1.5 million Canadian. will go in the ground. So you can do the math, right? You got let's call it another million for G&A just to keep numbers really simple. I think it'll come in lower than that, but until we get the programs and budget projections from our various partners, it's tough to exactly pinpoint that down. So that's another 1.5, right? Let's call it that. So, on the bare minimum, our cost to see two Ridgeline projects get drilled, as well as support our partners to see three partner-funded projects get drilled. You're looking at about a minimum of 3 million Canadian, right? And that's, of course, very bare bones, right? So you can kind of start putting together kind of our requirements for fundraising and what we'd be looking to do.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going with this. And you and I spoke about this a little bit on the episode that we did on kind of your background and how you found the industry so far. But
Yeah.
how does capital raising work for you typically? Like having a raise, let's just call it, this is forward looking and speculation. You haven't announced anything yet. But if you had to raise 3 million Canadian, how long would that take? Like, is it something where you can just do over the phone, make a couple of phone calls and that money is going to be waiting for you? Or like, how do you see capital raising?
It's kind of a mix of both. I mean, the beauty of Zoom, online meetings really taking over the last 5 years has made financing a lot easier. In the past, you would have had to fly to every single city you're raising money out of, right? And actually literally, shake hands and sit down with every single investor. That's no longer necessary, which is great. I think it saves a lot of money and it drops the cost of a financing for companies, right? So we'll do a mix of both. Probably 80%. 80% will be online phone calls, reaching out to current investors and shareholders. And then there'll be a component of flying to a couple cities where I have a good concentration of shareholders where it's worth, making a quick visit and sitting down with, 10 people over a couple day period.
Mm.
It's usually pretty effective.
Going to Vancouver, I assume. What is it, next week?
Vancouver, Toronto. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you don't expect any challenges necessarily. Like you know that the money is going to be there when and the way you need it.
Yeah, we have a great, honestly, like not to, we'll toot our own horn. We have a great story. I've built a lot of trust with shareholders and we've continued to deliver on the core goals of the company, right? What we just have not quite delivered on yet is we're still waiting on that big discovery, that big hole that makes everybody, really turn their heads. So, but as far as that, we've spent the money the way we said we would. We've delivered on multiple deals. We're seeing our projects get advanced. So it's been, raising capital from that perspective has always been relatively straightforward, right? Like people see what we're trying to achieve and they recognize that it's a numbers game, and the more money and the more money going in the ground and the more projects being drilled, the better chance you have of making material discovery. So this is our best year in company history coming up here in 2025 for that, right? 5 projects getting drilled. It'll be by far the largest exploration budget in company history as well. So, I mean, all the things are lining up for us to go and make a big discovery, and I think shareholders will see that.
What do you think could have gone better in 2024, though, Chad? I mean, if you had a magic wand and you could wave it at
Sure.
2024, change something operationally, and I understand one of your main frustration will likely be with the share price,
Mhm.
but that's not something you control really. You control the operations. So, from an operational perspective, what would you wave the magic wand at?
Oh, geez, that's a tough one. I mean, honestly, if I could go back and redo 2024, I would have probably done my best to drill one of our projects, like maybe get a maiden drill program into Big Blue, for example. Only reason being is just we were so focused on getting the deal across the table with So 32 at Selena, that what the problem is, I think, is in a tough market, the only thing that drives real buying in a stock is a true discovery, right? You can pull off good deals. You can have positive news coming out of Swift, for example, where they drilled the highest grade hole they've drilled in the project's history, right? But it fell relatively flat with shareholders, and it's because we need to find we need to come out with a material discovery. So probably just trying to be a little more aggressive with our own 100% owned portfolio. I think if I could go back, I probably would have done so. But aside from that, we've executed on a few pretty important initiatives for the company in 2024, and now we've set up for a really good year in 25. So yeah, aside from waving a wand and getting investors to give a shit about the junior space in general, which is out of our control, I would have just been more aggressive with our own exploration.
Should have listened to Sean Rooson's interview on COCA where he said their framework, or Cisco's framework for operation. I've said this 100 times now. People are sick and tired of hearing it, but their operational framework is SUDS. and that's an acronym for shut up and drill stupid.
Yeah.
And that it's easier said than done, and it's just an acronym, of course. But let's just talk about that though. I mean, you have Atlas, which again we'll cover more in depth a little bit here in a
Yeah.
couple of minutes. But Big Blue, what do you have planned for late Q1? I think is it you're targeting
Yeah.
the drill program. What, how much, when exactly does it start? How much are you going to put into that from that 1 million that you said you're putting in the ground? And yeah, tell me everything.
Yeah, well, so the infill program that we just completed, that was pretty key because we don't have the cash. We won't have the cash in the bank where I can go out and drill 15 holes at Big Blue, right, and just pepper the entire project with holes. So we need to be really, really specific about where we're drilling. And so we're trying to put the holes in the absolute strongest altered, highest chargeability zone. Well, not when I say highest chargeability, I guess sometimes the actual best porphyry copper intercepts don't come from the highest chargeability zones in an IP anomaly. A lot of times they actually come from the transition zones where you're seeing that transition from high charge to low charge or etc. So I guess we just want to put the few holes that we're going to drill to start, probably 2 to 3 holes, all of them about 800 to 1,000 meters deep, depending on the depth of the hole. Um,
Hmm.
those are going to be, and we're drilling these deep holes because we want to see all the way through the section, right? But we're going to really put them, we're putting our best foot forward on it, right? The infill IP survey is going to tell us where is our best possible chance to hit the core of this porphyry system, as well as the dike swarm that bleeds up into these old historic mines can also be a very productive horizon, and it's quite shallow to drill. So between those kind of two, we're hoping that we can put a good first few holes into the system and prove that there is a productive porphyry there, and then we see where it goes from there, right? Just based on the scale of the intercept kind of defines what the next steps are. But the idea would be is the rig is scheduled for March 1st. It could vary, right? I mean, we get the rig when it finishes at the job that it's currently drilling at, right? So that's kind of it's slated for March 1st. Could that push to March 15th? Absolutely, right? It could change, but yeah, that's the idea. Start March 1st, probably a 2 month program at Big Blue, and then we move over to Atlas while we're waiting for assays from Big Blue.
What have you used so for targeting it specifically geophysics and geological evidence is essentially what you're using for targeting a bit blue.
Yeah, it's a mix of a few things. So the IP, because this is a mostly covered target, there's two mines that outcrop at surface, but they're essentially surrounded by a sea of alluvium, right? Relatively shallow alluvium, but you can't really see the porphyry system outcropping at surface. So IP is the most effective way to target it at a higher level. What we're also using is we've got a great geologic model that our geologist has put together, over 2 kilometers of rock chips that show the northeast trend of that dike swarm, which is also a very critical piece to the story. And then we're going to be doing some soils, getting them run. We have over 1,000 soils we collected last year. We didn't run them just due to budget reasons yet. We're going to run them now, starting in late January, and we'll have those results before the drill program starts in March. So again, you can use trace element geochemistry in soils to you'll see upwelling zones or plumes of alteration and trace elements that are associated with that porphyry undercover with your soil. So again, between the IP, the soils, and everything, you kind of target where everything kind of overlays each other in a nice bullseye, and that's where we'll be putting the holes.
There is an outcropping garnet skarn, if I'm not mistaken. Is that
Correct.
something that matters for targeting at all, or is it just a nugget?
Well, what the garnet skarn tells you is it's telling you where you are in the zonation pattern of the system, right? So what we would consider that skarn is a proximal or very near to the source porphyry, right? So it's not very far away, based on the scale of alteration and the amount of heat that would be required to generate a skarn of that scale, over the kilometers that it does outcrop its surface. You have to be pretty close to that porphyry source. So we think we're kind of call it less than a you'd be less than a kilometer away, kind of to be in that halo around that. You'd be in that inner halo of the porphyry system, in that garnet skarn.
So what else do you know about about it from a structural perspective? Faults, folds, anything else?
Yep. Well, the northeast trending dike swarm that cuts all the way between the Scarn Hill and the Delaware
Mhm.
mines, which is over 2 kilometers of strike, that is the critical controlling piece to the whole story, right? That dike swarm, that's what's sourcing the high grade copper at surface. Those dikes, we believe, will coalesce down into the porphyry system as it drops down through that structural corridor. So we hope to drill across the dike swarm and then into the porphyry itself with our initial program, kind of to
Wait.
both chase high grade copper skarn and to go after hopefully a high grade porphyry system that's bleeding out of.
Okay. So drilling is scheduled to start in March. Could be
Yep.
the 1st, could be the 15th, give or
Yep.
take around that time. When is it going to finish? And how are you going to be news releasing everything kind of hole by hole, batch it? What are you thinking?
Well, it's going to be about 2 months to finish the total program, at least the preliminary first few holes. It should take roughly 3 to 4 weeks each for the deep drilling that we're planning on doing. We'll be sending assays off to the lab as they're received in batches. Depending on what we see, if we see something truly amazing in hole number one, we might announce results from that, right? If they come back in time, it really just comes down to what we see. But with only a 2 hole program, chances are pretty good we're going to announce the results of both holes all at the same time. Even if there's something material that we're seeing, we'll probably drill both holes. We can try to put the full story together for our shareholders. While we're waiting on assays for that, we'll be off drilling our Atlas project, which is a shallow oxide gold play, quick to drill, cheap to drill, and very quick to get assays back as well. So
Yeah. But essentially, big blue assays definitely in Q2 of
yeah,
2025.
oh
Okay.
for sure, yeah,
That's
yeah.
how I'll note it down.
I'd say late Q2 is probably mid to late Q2 would be a realistic estimate there.
In the meantime, you're working Atlas, and this might be a good point in the conversation to talk
Yeah,
about Atlas. It's the Atlas Gold Project, which you just picked
yeah,
up. You call this a high grade oxide gold exploration prospect. It's still in Nevada, so
yep,
Eureka County to be specific, and you've acquired it by staking. So you have no work commitments for it, although, again, you want to do some work on it. There's no royalties, as far as I understand it.
yep,
But whenever I see projects that have been held by already big companies, like Newmont has held this project, if I'm not mistaken.
yep,
So when I see them
yep,
changing hands especially in well-developed jurisdictions like Nevada, well sought after jurisdictions too, right?
yeah.
And especially through staking, the first thing I think about is how come? Why would anyone let it go if it's really that good? In this case, specifically, even before it being drilled, and why would you be the chosen one? So how come? How are you able to pick
Yeah.
this up, and why hasn't it been drilled yet?
No, for sure. I mean, that is truly an excellent point because Nevada has been pretty heavily picked over the years, right? And there's actually a few really key points that have led to this project being overlooked and kind of fading away in the eyes of modern explorers. And the kind of the two main points is one, it's hosted in checkerboard ground, and what I mean by checkerboard is Santa Fe Pacific was a prolific or Santa Fe Gold was a prolific gold company in the 1990s, right? They were spun out of the Santa Fe Pacific Railroad Company, which owned checkerboard chunks of private ground within a certain buffer area around all of their railroads. Santa Fe Pacific was given private ownership of chunks of ground, and it truly looks like a checkerboard, right? So it's a 1 mile by 1 mile checkerboard of private ground, public ground, private ground, public ground. And the reason that kind of, I guess you could say, makes it difficult to do exploration is gold deposits don't care about section lines, right? They don't care about checkerboard ground. So what you ended up having all across Nevada is Santa Fe ended up making discoveries where maybe they made some really big discoveries, by the way. They were actually acquired by Newmont for a pretty big sum. I can't, it was over $1 billion, couple $1 billion. But they made some significant discoveries. But there was also a lot of times where they owned ground where they owned part of an anomaly, but the rest, or maybe the most of the anomaly, was actually on someone else's ground. And what it led to was, well, we're not going to drill that because if I drill it and we make a discovery, it now costs more for me to acquire the ground from my neighbor, right? And so that was a deterrent, a partial deterrent towards, because it led to unconsolidated fractions of ground across these areas that kind of wasn't worth chasing. So that's one reason. The other reason is historically in the 90s, 80s, 90s, and into the early 2000s, groups like Newmont and Barrick operated under very, very strict guidelines under what age rocks and what rock types were considered hosts in Nevada, right? And if your rocks did not fall into that basket, they would not look at them, right? Even even in the case of having, an obvious gold system at surface. And it was because, it was in the fledgling, still in early days of understanding Carlin type systems. And unfortunately, in the early days, there was some flawed reasoning, I guess you could call it, as to what constituted a good host rock and what did not. And so in the case of Atlas, that area was considered not a good host rock. And the reason was it was Pennsylvanian to Permian age rocks. Those, no discovery had ever been made in those age of rocks on the Carlin Trend. And the big guys, the Newmonts and the Barracks, they decided that no, this is not a prospective host rock. And even though we own ground here and we see significant gold in soils anomalies, we see significant oxide gold and rock chips, that must be just an anomaly and we're not going to drill it. And that literally was the general mindset, right? And so it wasn't until actually our VPX, Mike Harp, he was with Gold Standard Ventures, which is their project. The Railroad District is hosted in the Rain Trend, which is a parallel trend to Atlas, right? It's kind of a parallel splay off the main Carlin Trend. They made a significant discovery. I think Mike's discovery hole at North Dark Star, which is the deposit that he was working on, their discovery hole was 126 meters of 3.95 grams per ton oxide gold in Pennsylvania and Permian rocks. And that was kind of the eye-opening moment, right? It's like, oh, wow, wait, you're getting very significant drill intercepts, 400, 500 gram meter drill intercepts coming out of the wrong host rocks. And that led to Dark Star being acquired, or Gold Standard Ventures being acquired by Orla Mining. That project's now going into development. So we see the same opportunity at Atlas in the same Pen-Perm host rocks, similar scale of the anomaly, similar grades of rock chips that show, okay, there's actually a material opportunity here to make a big discovery. Let's acquire the checkerboard ground that's available, and then we can talk to Nevada Gold Mines, who owns the rest of the checkerboard ground, to consolidate ground, right? So for us, we think it's a great opportunity. And it's an easy, you'd look at it normally and say, how in the world did a 3 kilometer continuous gold trend not get drilled? Well, that's exactly why. There's a lot of different factors that lead into it. And over time, as projects get pushed, kind of out of the public eye and stuff, they fade away and people forget about them, right? And so that's kind of how this happened at Atlas. We'd had our eyes on it for about 4 years, been owned previously by historic operators, private companies, weren't able to do anything with it in what has been a really terrible market. So when that project became available, we jumped on it. And it's an incredible opportunity. I mean, when you think of, there is probably very few 3 kilometer long gold trends of oxide gold at surface in Nevada that have not had a single drill hole on them. You can probably count them on one hand, right? And this is one of them, in my opinion. So I'm really excited about it.
Can this become, and I have a couple of follow-up questions that I'm not going to ignore what you said specifically about the Pen-Perm rocks here, but can this become a strategy for Ridgeline? Like, is this something you can replicate, kind of bottle up and replicate for, bringing in new projects?
Well, we've already been doing this like Atlas is not a departure from how we operate and how we assess and generate projects from the founding of the company. I mean, look at Swift. Swift was actually dropped by Barrick. Barrick owned Swift up until 2015. They dropped the project because in their eyes, the wrong host rocks were at the project, right? We came in, consolidated the ground, rebuilt the geologic model from the ground up, and proved that the exact same host rocks that host all of the mineralization on the Carlin Trend or on the Cortez Trend exist at Swift, and we did the deal with them. I think the history of our company has been built around coming into underexplored and underappreciated projects, rebuilding the geologic model and kind of throwing the dogma to the side of that the historic Nevada approach to, well, if it's not the right rocks or not along the right trend, it's not valuable, or it's not going to host a discovery. And we kind of try to let the data drive how we advance and generate projects. And what we're really good at is picking out projects of scale, and Atlas is one of those projects of scale. So I think it's a pretty consistent continuation of how we've been doing business for a long time now.
How actively are you going to use that in 2025? I mean, are you going to be actively looking for new projects and using that same strategy, or are you kind
Yeah.
of happy with what you've got now?
No, that's a good question. If you were to ask, we're full up this year as far as like projects that we can fund and drill. we're there, right? The 5 projects that are going to be drilled, 2 of which are being funded by us, that's our max. That being said, we're always looking for that next opportunity because, we could put holes into both Big Blue and Atlas and decide that one of those projects maybe doesn't hit the mark for us anymore, right? That maiden drill program disproves our theory or whatever. And we always want to have something coming in the pipeline to replace those early stage projects. So we'll be looking. I don't think we're going to be actively or aggressively staking unless something truly special comes up, right? Because as far as we see right now, Big Blue is an incredible porphyry copper opportunity, and Atlas is, as good as it gets when it comes to oxide gold at surface in Nevada for an early stage undrilled project. So we're pretty happy where we're at.
Again, I'm kind of venturing off into a different direction, but I'm definitely going to be back with a couple of specific questions on Atlas. But I'm thinking, how do you see the exploration environment in Nevada as a whole right now? I mean, do you expect any changes in 2025 with the new president, with the water situation, with everything on top of it? How are you assessing the situation right now?
It's a tough time to be an explorer. It's been a tough time to be an explorer for the last 3, 4 years now. There's a couple headwinds that we're facing. One being the Canadian exchange rate is really working against us, right? So we raise money in Canadian dollars. We spend 90% of our budget in US funds. And right now the exchange rate is in and around, 1.4, right? So, every dollar we raise, 40 cents is getting lopped right off the top. So that's something that we have to be cognizant of. And it's a difficult thing that we have to deal with because it's not cheap to operate in Nevada. So that's probably the biggest concern at the moment, I guess you could say, is just raising capital and deploying it effectively in a market that's certainly not rewarding anything but massive discoveries. Some of the things that are really going for us, I think there is definitely a sentiment is improving in Nevada with the new administration coming in. I think people believe that it's going to become easier to permit projects, at least during the four-year time frame that we're currently operating within. So I think permitting, hopefully, I don't think permitting is going to get worse, which is a positive. Hopefully it'll improve. So there's a few things. I think we're going to see more funding for junior mining, more grants and funding for, critical metals, strategic metals, including copper, lead and zinc, manganese, you name it, antimony, tungsten. I think all of those are going to see a little more support from the federal government as well. So there's some things that are really going for us, I guess you could say, we're operating in Nevada and trying to make domestic discoveries. And there's a few things that we need to be concerned about. And I think the biggest thing to be concerned about is just access to capital and the current strength of the U.S. dollar doesn't help.
Which is not necessarily Nevada specific, outside of
No,
Nevada not being
more
too
of a more of
really.
a macro, yeah, more of a macro approach for
Yeah.
sure.
How is Atlas from a permitting standpoint? I mean, what else do you have to get done? Any paperwork, anything else?
No, we're set to go. Essentially, we're ready to drill. The only thing we got to do is raise some cash. So
Okay.
yeah,
Locals, animals, water, everything else taken care of.
taken care of. Yeah, no, it's great. That's what gets me really excited about 2025 is, we did our first deal with Nevada Gold Mines in 2021. We've done a deal every year since with a major. You know, and So those are all starting to come to fruition, right? We're seeing heavy spending by all of our partners. There's no permit. We got our plan of operations exploration permit at Salina to allow for advanced exploration. That was approved in July of last year. So all the major hurdles are kind of removed at this point, and we have some very motivated partners that want to put a lot of money in the ground. So yeah, we're going to see a huge amount of money being spent, up to, 12, $14 million Canadian, give or take, being spent on exploration is our expectation this year. Not guaranteed yet, but all the early discussions with our partners, that's kind of the general time range that we expect to be in. And no significant permitting delays or anything in the that'll, slow that exploration down. So it really comes down to just drilling a good hole.
With Atlas and Big Blue, though, or are you 100% sure that you actually do want to do the first pass drill programs on them? You want to do that? Like, you're not like, you go to Vancouver next week. If there's someone comes to you and they're like, oh, I really like the shade of blue that you're pulling out of the Big Blue. I want a piece of that. Are you giving them a piece of that? And the same for Atlas.
We're not, no. Yeah,
Mm,
so we're drilling these projects ourselves. I think like at the end of the day, Ridgeline, I founded the company to be an expert. We wanted to make discoveries, right? I mean, we're an exploration company, and that's what's made us successful. I think that's why we've been able to pull off these deals with these majors. Is every one of those projects we explored 100% through multiple drill programs with Ridgeline first, and then decided to bring on a partner for any reason, right? Too expensive, right? Maybe it's too deep to drill the targets, too risky, and so we brought on partners. But at the end of the day, what I want to deliver for shareholders is 100% owned Ridgeline discovery. And Big Blue and Atlas are both looking phenomenal. So yeah, I don't think there's any amount of, it would have to be something truly exceptional would have to be put in front of us to even consider doing a deal prior to a maiden drill program at either project.
mm.
And if we make a significant discovery at either, the intention is to advance that project 100% by Ridgeline, as far as we can until we feel that it's time to either monetize the asset or bring on a partner.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
a lot of that will be dictated by the market strength or lack thereof, I suppose, in response to what you're going to be pulling out of the ground. You've kind of that's how you've operated so far since I followed you, so I wouldn't expect
No,
anything.
for sure. Yeah. I mean, certainly the markets are going to dictate that, but I think the important thing is a material discovery, like a true discovery, like what you saw happen with Hercules Metals or Founders or any of these other groups, is it doesn't matter what the market sentiment is. If you deliver a truly meaningful discovery, your stock will respond. But that is the only thing that will cause actual true buying in your stock. So it's go out and make a discovery is really our number one mandate this year, right? I'm not focused on deal flow. I'm not focused on acquiring new projects. We're pretty happy with our portfolio. I want to see a new discovery get delivered at one or more of our partner and 100% owned projects.
Okay, but what does that look like for you for Big Blue? I mean, more
Sure.
specifically, what is it? What is a true discovery? Let's do Big Blue first, and then we'll do Atlas.
Sure. So it kind of there's two baskets for Big Blue, right? There's high grade copper skarn that outcrops all the way to surface, right? And then there's also the deeper covered porphyry targets that we've identified with our IP survey. So if we're drilling the copper skarn, I want to see something 20 to 50 meters or more intercepts of high grade copper skarn adjacent to this dike swarm underneath the mine, right? Like something like that, multi-percent copper, probably some gold, silver, lead, and zinc potentially in there as well. I want to see something in that range beneath the historic mines to say, hey, this is potentially a material skarn discovery. Then looking at the deeper porphyry, right? You want to see something like what you saw, what you're seeing Hercules deliver in their original discovery, right? You want to see big wide intercepts of porphyry style alteration and mineralization. I'm really interested. I like what I see out of Pampa Metals. Has been putting out some really interesting visuals the past couple days, which is showing a multi-phase um, uh, A-type vein system that has been pumped into that porphyry system there and looks pretty encouraging. So we want to see something like that on the porphyry edge. From the porphyry side, I want to show that there's an active porphyry system at Big Blue. Whether we drill a massive intercept at the start or not, I think I just want to prove the greater theory there that there is a porphyry system at depth, and probably more drilling is required. On the copper skarn side, I want to see a high grade skarn intercept in the first drill program to really, I think, to get me really excited.
Right. And then Atlas, and this might also be a good point to talk
Yeah,
about it more specifically,
yeah.
but what do you want to see
So
there?
Atlas, is a completely different target type than Big Blue. Big Blue is a little bit deeper. We're starting near surface, but we're going to take holes all the way down to 800-900 meters. At Atlas, it's shallow oxide gold. Very simple metallurgy in those types of deposits. So the threshold for an exciting drill hole is actually considerably lower. So for us, if I could see 100-gram-meter drill intercept, so 100 meters of a gram, 50 meters of 2 grams, you name it, right? But if we could see something like that in our maiden drill program, that would be a massive success. And we're actually, it sounds like I'm just throwing those numbers around, but the discovery hole at Dark Star was the 126 meters of just under 4 grams per ton. We're in the exact same host rocks. Mike Harp, our VP exploration, he made that discovery. He knows these host rocks better than probably most folks in Nevada. And we're right at the top of the host rock section, and we're seeing up to 8 grams per ton in rock chips. So we know that the system can produce high grade gold. We know that we're in the right rocks, and we know that we have a very considerable surface footprint that supports our belief that a 100-gram-meter intercept is not out of the realm of reality for a maiden drill program. So that's our threshold for success there.
Mm. It would be, I guess, part of that too would be the quality of the intercept, specifically from a continuity perspective, of course.
Yeah.
And you're talking about a 3 kilometer anomaly that you say is briefly broken up by shallow alluvium, and I'm quoting out of your news release here.
Yeah.
Can that already tell you anything about the continuity potential beneath these cover zones? I mean, if the mineralization is there, is it going to be continuous?
Yeah, and I mean, you never know till you throw that drill hole in there. But we have, based on the fact that on either side of that alluvium, which breaks apart our north and southern blocks of the project, on either side of that, you have pretty consistent both soils anomalies and rock chip anomalies that say, okay, there's a gold system on either side. And the reason that that alluvium is there is there's a big normal fault that's cutting through and it's dropping your host rocks down. Right. And then those host rocks are being covered by alluvium. So do I think that those host rocks probably continue at depth under alluvium and are probably mineralized? Yeah, the simple answer is probably yes. You said suds. You can say kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. The simplest answer is that yes, it's very likely continuous mineralization all the way through, but it has been dropped down. How deep it's been dropped down, we don't know yet. So it might just be 10 meters of gravel on top and you're right back into the zone, or it could be 100 meters of gravel on top. We really don't know.
Hmm. I thought you want to go back to the Pen-Perm rocks and these are
Sure.
so these are Pennsylvanian and Permian host rocks, which already
Yep.
makes me sound smarter than I am.
Hey,
But
you're
you've
nailed it.
identified them across the property.
Yep.
And why I'm bringing that up is in the first place is because I'm thinking whether variability in these host rocks at surface could have impacted how and where gold has been deposited deeper into the system. So are they how homogeneous is the occurrence of these Pen-Perm rocks?
Yeah, so that's the beauty of it, and what gives us a lot of confidence is you're seeing a slight the host rocks are getting slightly deeper as you go to the south. And what that means is they've been tilted a little bit. So if this was a flat, here's our host rocks, well, they've been slightly tilted. So our southern block here is slightly deeper than our northern block. So our northern block, the middle conglomerate, which is the best host unit at Dark Star, that is our opinion is exposed directly at surface. So how much of that middle conglomerate has been eroded, we're not 100% sure. But because we're only 2 kilometers to the south, we're now getting deeper in the system and it's getting just very gently and progressively deeper. You're seeing your grades actually drop off, right? So we're seeing 7 gram per ton rocks in the northern block at the northern tip, and we're seeing half gram, 0.9 gram per ton rock chips in the southern block. And it's not because the system is getting weaker, in our opinion. It's because the host rocks are getting deeper. So you're actually seeing those same 7 gram rocks. Those should be progressively getting slightly deeper as you head to the south. And what you're seeing above that is your upper siltstone, which is the next unit above the middle conglomerate. That zone still mineralizes, but it typically at Dark Star is not the highest grade portion of the system. So that reflects our understanding of what we believe is happening in Atlas is you have continuous mineralization for 3 kilometers. You have that the best part of the system is fully exposed at surface in the north, and for 3 kilometers, it's progressively getting shallower, slightly deeper. Now, you still have mineralization, oxide gold at surface, even throughout the south block, but you might have to drill 50 or 100 meters of that upper siltstone to get into that middle conglomerate unit that is hosted in the north block that you see down in the south. So that's getting slightly down a rabbit hole. I apologize for the geology there,
No, I
but
like it.
yeah. So what we believe is we think we have a fully preserved system for over 3 kilometers. It's briefly broken up by alluvium due to faulting. We think that you can drill deeper beneath that alluvium and see the continuation of that system. But from a scale perspective, what are we targeting across that entire 3 kilometer section? We'll be targeting a 2 to 3 million ounce oxide gold system is what can be hosted in the footprint of that 3 kilometer zone. And if we're right about how the geology is getting slightly deeper to the south, that means it's actually a good thing. It means the system is fully preserved in the south, maybe only 90% preserved, 80% preserved. We'll find out when we drill it in the north side. So, but we're right into the good stuff on the north end, and that's where we'll target our initial drilling is going right for the guts of it.
Is that also related to the variability in grade of the geophysical anomaly, though? Because I believe on occasions it's 0.12 grams per ton, and then on occasions it's like 0.08. So it's 0.08 or 0.008 grams per ton. So well, on occasions it's low, and then on
Yeah,
occasions it's exactly where you want it to be, which is
sure.
0.12.
Yeah. I guess I don't know where the 0.12 number comes from. Are you thinking just the average grades that I mentioned in the press release?
Yeah, I think so. I
Okay.
might have written
Okay.
it down wrong though, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's where I got it from.
There's over 346 historic rock chip samples, and those have been taken from all across the project, right? So if you have, in our case, I'll get geology again. There's kind of an anticline, right? So the hillside that anomaly is on, the anomaly, the soils and gold rock chips are showing up what we believe on the axis of the anticline. So if you were to sample on either side or in different parts of the project, you're not going to get a very high grade gold sample, right? Because that system is diving, because that anticline, maybe the best rocks aren't exposed at surface. So when we say we have an average of 0.12, that's across every rock chip taken on the project, whether it's mineralized or stone dead. That's the average grade, which is pretty exceptional. If you were to just take the average grade of only the mineralized zone, it'd be considerably higher, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm just looking at the
yeah.
news release, soil sample highlights. Yeah, that's what you say in here exactly. A total of 447 historical soil samples were collected across the property, ranging from below detection limit to 0.12 gram per ton. So, at an average,
Oh, it'd be 7.7 grams per ton would be the high. Yeah. Below
yeah,
detection, 7.7. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah, got it on here. What's the internal model of how deep the oxide sulphide boundary might be here, though, given that it's tilted like you explained?
Yeah, it should be given our understanding of gold deposits, oxide gold deposits in and around the Carlin Trend in Nevada. We would expect the oxidation profile to be fairly deep. So probably easily down to depths of 500 plus feet or 200 plus meters or 175 to 200 meters. I have pretty high confidence that you're going to continue to see
Hmm.
an oxide system. Once you start getting down, into the between 500 and 1,000 feet depth is typically when you start seeing transition rocks, depending on the deposit. So,
Okay.
with what we're chasing, we think that essentially the majority, if not all, of the mineralization should remain to be oxide to all the way to depth.
News coming out from here is going to be batched, I suppose. When do you expect news to start coming in, though?
Yeah, so we'll probably batch it out from this perspective of hopefully we'll have results coming out of Big Blue while we're drilling at Atlas. Probably do maybe two batches of results from Atlas. So
Hmm.
we'll probably announce all of Big Blue at the same time. Probably drill the best section at Atlas first two or three holes, get those off to the lab, and then we'll drill the next two holes, and we'll probably try to put out probably two batches of assays. So you should see stuff coming through, I don't know, early June, late June. Start
Okay.
seeing some results coming out of both Big Blue and maybe early results out of Atlas as well.
So we'll have plenty to talk about over Q1 and Q2, and
Oh
hopefully
yeah,
we'll speak a couple
yeah.
of times. I'll let you go now, though. I know you have
No,
to
no,
go.
no.
What am I forgetting to ask you though here at the end? What else did you come here hoping to talk about that I failed to bring up?
Man, I feel like we covered it pretty well. I think just the big thing that's really exciting for us this year is we're trying to get all of our drilling out of the way first, right? Like I want to go make a 100% owned discovery at either Big Blue or Atlas or both in the first half of the year so that people can get excited. And then after that, we still have all the drill programs from our partner projects, right? Of which we're making money at Selena off of that program. And we get to be, call it passive partners in the NGM drill programs as well. We're kept up to date on those. So there's going to be a ton of news flow this year. All the way from, I'd say you're going to see serious news flow starting with our drill program starting in March, and we're going to see drilling continue all the way till probably November, December of next year or of this year. Apologies. So yeah, going to be lots of news flow, and I hope multiple discoveries come out of it. So
And that's Chad Peters of Ridgeline Minerals, listed as RDG on the Venture Exchange in Canada. Chad, thank you so much for your time.
yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.